We are honored to have Mr. Ajay Jha, an eminent personality among us today. Mr. Ajay Jha retired from DAV Group with 20 years of experience. He has worked not only as a reporter for a national daily, but has also edited a fashion magazine. He worked as a copy editor for ad agencies, and he is passionate about environment and animals. Now, I would request Sir to say few words.
Sir, your mic is mute. Please unmute it.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was saying I thought I'd get a chance to speak at the end of it all, but then it's great to be in Surendranath Centenary with old colleagues, Principal Ma'am. So I wish you all the best. Give it your best shot. Put your best foot forward. I've heard lots and lots about this school and about its kids. So I'm sure you're going to do a good job. And after you're done, I'll give a quick review. I'll see what all I can add to your performance and how I can make a small difference in your lives. So let's get started, please.
Thank you, sir, and
Thank you, sir, for your valuable words.
talk from you after the event.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Now, rules for the talk show. Every student would get 2 to 3 minutes. Uh, it should be flawless, and if you are speaking from within, take some more time. Moving ahead with the program now, I would like the students of 10th A to present their book review one by one. First, I would like to call Aditi Singh.
Good evening, respected principal ma'am, honorable judges,
Please,
teachers, and all my dear friends.
before you speak, switch on your
Yes,
camera.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
You
Yes, ma'am.
can.
I would like to start once again. Yes. Good,
Please
e-
begin.
Good evening, honorable judges, respected principal ma'am, teachers, and all my dear friends. I am Aditi Singh from class 10A. I am here to review book named The Immortals of Melwa, written by Amish Tripathi. Before proceeding with the storyline, I would like to give a quick review about the author. Amish is a 1974 born IIM educated banker turned happy author. He had 14 years long career in financial services. He is passionate about history, mythology, and philosophy, which is clearly portrayed in his way of writing. This book is his debut and part one of Shiva trilogy, which is continued by part two, The Secret of Nagas, and the final part, The Oath of the Vayuputra. The story is set in the land of Melua during 1900 BC, which is also known as in the real world Indus Valley civilization, and start with arrival of Shiva, the protagonist of our story. The Suryavanshi rulers of Melwa face severe perils. The Melhuans are looking for hope and believe in an ancient legend which says when evil reaches epic proportions, when all seems lost, when it appears that your enemies have triumphed, the destroyer of evil will emerge as Nilkant. Shiva is destined to become Nilkant, but he did not believe in these prophecies. Although he leads a war against the Chandravanshis, considering them evil. But were the Chandravanshis evil, or it's just a matter of perspective? If not, then who are evil, and how to find out is still left to be discovered. The story includes the characters like Shiva, Bhadra, childhood friend of Shiva, Daksha and Virini, the king and the queen of Melua, their daughter Sati, and the Nagas, a sinister race of deformed humans. The theme is that the good and evil are two facets of the same coin. Amish decided to base his story on a radical ideas that all God were one human beings. It was their deeds in the human life that made them famous as gods. The author has used our classical legend of Mahadev and blended it with fiction, using the names and places related to Lord Shiva like Mansarovar, Nandi, Gunas, and Daksha makes it more relatable. The writing is quite imaginary and it is a perfect fusion of the thoughts of real world and the stories of the past. Expressing a critical view, I think the characters have more to express than explain, but it may be left for the further parts to assist. It would also affect the believers of the real legend of Mahadev if taken as an offense. At last, I would like to suggest this book to the readers who would like to know the stories of Hindu mythology with different aspects. That's it. Thank you.
আমি ট্রেনে ছিলি তখন ফোন এসেছিল এক ম্যাডামের, গার্গী ম্যাডামের, ওনাদের ইংলিশে কিছু টকশো ওঠে।
That was a wonderful performance.
तो
Next,
बोल लो कि
Avni.
हम उसको रिकॉर्ड करना चाहते हैं, अगर हम अचानक से बोल रहे हैं हमको तो
Good evening, teachers, and to one and all present here. Today, I, Avni, will be reviewing the book written by Sudha Murthy, The Mother I Never Knew. It comprises of two stories that explores the quest by two men, each of them in search of the mother they never knew they had. So, the main theme injustice and the deception to the women in our society and the suffering they have to go through. The first story is about Venkatesh, a bank manager who meets his look-alike after his transfer to Hubli, and later he finds them to be his impoverished stepfamily. The second story tells us about Mukesh, who comes to know that he is an adopted child after his father's death, and he sets out to find his birth mother. He sets out to find his birth mother and eventually finds her but decides to keep his loyalty to the mother who raised him. So both the stories have an emotional upheaval. The characters were somewhat typical and genuine, and the story was weaved in such a way that you could relate it to any Indian household. And all the characters have a very strong emotional appeal. On the critical side, the story was a bit rushed, from which I wasn't so satisfied with as a reader because of my expectations from the author to have a suitable ending for the characters. But Sudha Murthy's way of writing was quite simplistic and living, which would keep the readers hooked with the book anyways, and it's one of the worth reads. And I chose to read this book because the title seemed very fascinating to me. And overall, this book is based on a very critical problem of our society, and this problem which still exists that we won't be quite aware of. So that's all about the mother I never knew. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I would like to call Aniket Kumar.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, respected principal ma'am, teachers, and all the delegates present here. Today, I shall like to introduce you all a book that I read recently, A Murder on the Orient Express, written by the mystery queen Agatha Christie. It is a very mysterious novel which starts with a murder on a train and then turns in every aspect while uncovering the murderer. It consists of surprises and fills the reader with curiosity. The plot firstly introduces us with the main character, Hercule, a private detective and a retired Belgian officer. He was on his trip to London in the Orient Express. On his way in the train, Hercule meets Cassidy, who is disguised as Ratchet. As the story moves, Ratchet begs Hercule, telling him that he is being threatened for his life, and Hercule disappoints him because of his past sins. The very next morning, Ratchet was found dead. Being a detective, Hercule started investigating and he found a suspect another one would arise eventually. As he started reaching the grooves, they became entangled. The case even becomes more enigmatic as many mishaps take place inside the Express, and no reader can surmise about what the rotten behind the case or predict what would happen. This case is like finding the disguised wolf in a flock of sheep. And I really recommend this book to mystery crime lovers and those who are ready for some anxiety. But I also felt a slight discomfort suggesting it to new readers who, due to its widespread plot, this book changes the perspective of negotiating someone. One can never predict what's next and never know who's the foe. If you kill a murderer, there's still a murderer left in the room. And all of you never, and all of your good and bad is counted. And like this, I would like to conclude my review. Thank you.
Next, Harshit Kumar.
Good evening to one and all present here. I am Harshit Kumar from class 10A. Today, I will review the classic Oliver Twist written by Charles Dickens. The story is a fiction, but many characters and their lives are influenced by the real people who Charles met in his real life. In the story, Charles focused on industrialization in mid-90s in Europe, child labor, domestic violence, life of criminals and street kids, recruitment of children as criminals, and cruel treatment of orphans. Though he had not directly pointed these things, but anyone can notice them while reading. The story revolves around the main protagonist, Oliver Twist, and his adventures from misery to merry. In the story, Oliver Twist is a 9-year-old boy with an unknown father and a mother who died giving birth to him. Now, Oliver is forced to live like an orphan, had to do child labor, experienced domestic violence, was recruited as a pickpocket for free food and free shelter, and many more. Towards the end of the story, Oliver found his mother's relatives and they adopted him. So, at the end, he lived a happy life. While reading the book, I really impressed by the way of writing. All the cruelty of the Charles society in mid-90s is reflected in the storylines. He used symbolism in many places like description of characters which made it easy to understand and funny and interesting. I chose this book to read during summer vacation as I was in a search of a classic. And this was a classic along with a main protagonist of my age group, which made it a perfect book. At the end, I recommend this classic to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, 10th A students, for book reviews. Now, moving on to 10th B.
Excuse me, Neha ma'am.
I
There's
guess
one more boy, Amandeep.
one more boy,
Amandeep.
Avanti.
Yes, yes, sir.
Please.
I
Yes, my
guess somehow got
apologies.
left out.
Yes.
Never mind.
Amandeep,
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. My name is Amandeep Poddar of class 10A. I would like to give a review on the story Gulliver Travels, also known as one of the first novel of English literature. The timeline of the story is from 1699 to 1715. It is a satire fantasy story. In the story, there is a character Lemuel Gulliver who can never be satisfied with the simple life of a doctor. He loves excitement, adventure. So he sets on 4 voyages of discovery. In his voyages, he faced a series of mishappenings that included living with people and animals of unusual size and behavior. It is a fiction story which included various unreal characters like the Emperor of Lilliput, Flimnap, and Don Pedro. Jonathan Swift, also known as Dean Swift, was born in Ireland and was the master of satire. Swift didn't wrote this story for entertainment purpose. This story is a satire to politicians, scientists, army, and all the different people and society of England during that era. Swift wanted to convey that people should not try to be so superior that they leave humanity aside. Humans should always give their best to support non-violence, peace, and lead a happy life. The elements on which Swift should be criticized are that Swift uses satire to poke fun at human controversies, science, and academics, which is not so favorable. I opted to read this book in my summer vacation because this book has many imaginary and interesting incidents that, that generate the interest to read further and never make me bored. I also love reading adventurous and the fiction stories. Thank you.
Now moving on to 10th B, Ashka.
Good evening to Principal Ma'am, teachers, and the Honorable Judge, Mr. Avjai. We have heard a lot about you from our English teacher, Mrs. Gargi Pal, and I, for one, am quite excited to present my views to you. I'll speak on the book Shiva Trilogy. The name of the author is Amish Tripathi. He used to be a banker for around 14 years, but he was totally obsessed with history. He was an atheist and was quite pragmatic. But it is a difficult thing to think that how come an atheist and pragmatic person turn to write the stories of Shiva. I would like to quote a line from his interview to tell this answer. My books are a blessing, and my soul prepared me to receive this blessing over the decades, frankly, out of consciousness. He found happiness in writing, and thus he became a writer of one of the best sellers. I would like to give an intro of the book. The trilogy has three parts. The first one, The Immortals of Meluha, followed by The Secret of Nagas, and the last part, The Oath of Vayuputras. The book is set for 4,000 years ago and starts by the emerging of a barbarian called Shiva. He enters a seemingly perfect society of Meluha, but soon realizes that it has its own flaws. There he meets one of the other protagonists, Sati. The trilogy also talks about Somras, a potion that could give immortality, immortality till a certain extent. It talks about how any invention can turn into evil, and when the negativity overweighs the positivity of an invention, it turns evil. Now I'd like to talk about the characters of the story. The main protagonist, of course, is Shiva. He is a fierce warrior, a consummate dancer, a leader, a quick wit, all powerful yet incorruptible, a passionate lover, and much more. So he was the ideal man to be. And then there's Sati, of course, the brave warrior, a punctual, pious woman, and much more. And she, in turn, is the ideal woman to be. They both are like the Zen philosophy of yin and yang, the masculine and the feminine, the dark and the light. The thing that I found extraordinary about this book is that it gives completely plausible explanations for what is called magic. Like, I'm sure all of our grandmothers and mothers have told us about how Shiva severed his boy's head, Ganesha's. I'm sure we have heard about Ganesha, how Shiva severed his head and then replaced it with an animal, elephant's head. But if he's really a dad and he could replace it with anything, let's face it, why would he want his child to have? This trilogy therefore gives a plausible explanation for this. It tells that Somras had turned into evil and had its many side effects. It gave immortality to a certain extent. Still, it had many side effects, like it drained the Saraswati River. Then it created a new race of people called the Nagas who had deformities. And this deformities caused a lot of pain to them. And Ganesha, for example, and we all know Kali, of course, they are both Nagas. So it gives a perfect explanation why there's a head of elephant and there are so many arms to these people. I'd also like to say that I found it interesting as it creates a bridge between the ancient mythology and the modern skeptics. I'm sure many of my friends here, including me, are not very much interested in the ancient mythologies, but I would like to say that this book gave me a totally new perspective. It's like the turning point of my life. It gave me such a new way of saying, thinking, and seeing that it has turned me into a new me. And it also makes me believe that a God can exist, and it makes me believe that any one of us can be the Almighty. I chose this book because I wanted to try something new and thought it is a bestseller. What is the big deal about this book being bestseller? I'm sure anyone could have written a book about Shiva and how we have also seen in serials. So what's new about it? But when I started reading the book, I loved it. It is now my favorite book, and the whole trilogy, in fact. And let's face it, the covers are pretty interesting themselves. I can totally connect it with my real life. Absolutely. It says that every society has its own flaw, like the seemingly perfect society of Meluha. It had this system of vikarma which said that a person was tainted by the bad karma of his or her previous life, and therefore they suffered in this life. And there also the concept of nagas. This is how the society segregated people, and not a few years ago this happened in India too. We segregated the Dalits, the Shudras, and many more. And it also I also got to see that how government or head of the states plays an important role in shaping the society. The head of their nation, head of Maluha Daksh, and the head of Swadeep Dilipa, they both made bad choices, and it ended in incineration of their nation. So we can totally see how it relates to our life. The message I received from these books, and here I'd like to quote from the book The Oath of Vayuputras. There are many realities. There are various versions of what may appear obvious. Whatever appears as the unshakable truth, its exact opposite may also be true in other contexts. After all, one's reality is but perception, viewed through various prisms of context. I also learned a lesson that all of us can rise to be a better person. A lesson that there exists a potential God in every single human being. All we have to do is listen to ourselves. In the end, I'd like to conclude by saying what Amish Tripathi starts with every book. The universe bows to Lord Shiva. I bow to Lord Shiva. Om Namah Shivaya.
Thank you, Ashka. Next, Priyam.
Yeah. Good evening to one and all present here. Today, I am going to present a short book review on the analysis of one of the most thriller novels, And Then There Were None, by Queen of Crime, Agatha Christie. Agatha Christie was an English novelist and playwright with 75 novels to her credit. Most famous ones include And Then There Were None, Murder on Orient Express, and others. What made her stories stand out were, of course, the characters. She created memorable and dignified characters which any class of people could relate to. Her genre included mostly murder mysteries. And Then There Were None was first published as Ten Little Nethers after the children's counting rhyme, which serves as a major element of the plot. The latest title is taken from the last five words of the song. This is not only a crime fiction but also a psychological thriller which envelopes the reader into an aura of suspense and heightens our curiosity about the murderer, which are executed according to the rhyme. The plot revolves around 10 characters, each of whom is killed in a manner which reflects one of the lines of the poem. The whole thing is utterly fascinating and is the most baffling mystery Agatha Christie has ever written. I feel no other writer is as close to her in respect to the ingenuity and mind-boggling plot. It is full of shock and surprises. The twist at the end is unbelievable. The murderer's identity is revealed, which quenches the reader's curiosity and unraveling the mystery behind the extraordinary naming of the wood. Hence, it is the most intriguing thriller that I have read, which kept me enthralled and guessing to the end. It truly is a masterpiece. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyam. Next is Ramsha.
Good morning. Good morning, respected principal, honorable teachers, and honorable judges present here. So today I'll be speaking about the book Gulliver's Travels, which was written by Jonathan Swift. First, I will talk a few lines about Jonathan Swift. Jonathan Swift was an Anglo-Irish satirist, essayist, and poet. He was an Anglican cleric who became dean of St. Patrick's Cathedral. He originally wrote under pseudonyms such as Lambert Gulliver, Isaac Bickerstaff. So Gulliver's Travels is a satire by Jonathan Swift, satirizing both human nature and traveler's tales. Lambert Gulliver is the protagonist and narrator of the story. The story is very adventurous, and the best thing about it is the constructive social criticism used by the author Jonathan Swift. He has very smoothly portrayed human nature, which is we take much pride in ourselves, and we do not respect others' perspective, expecting that other people respect our perspective. We when we give respect, we get respect. So Gulliver's Travels was originally written under the title Travel into four different nations. So, first, Gulliver enters Lilliput, where he is considered as a giant human being, and Lilliputians are very tiny. So Gulliver takes much pride in himself and tries to dominate the inhabitants of Lilliput, which are very small and kind of weak in front of him. Next, he enters Bobbing Nang, where he is considered to be he by the inhabitants of Bobbing Nang, and then he enters Huang, which is an utopian land. It's an utopian land. There is no hatred, selfishness, no love even. It's a very utopian vision of land, which Gulliver feels that it's very dull and not interesting at all. So Jonathan Swift basically tries to put values and convinces the reader about these, that self-respect should be within each one of us, but we should also be humble towards other readers. Also, this book was recommended by my father, and I really liked it because if you see the constructive social criticism used in the book is very beautiful, and it's a satire. It is commenting on human nature, and it gives us some more to look at our flaws, our nature. So I see that you ought to read this book. It's very adventurous and very beautifully written. So it's very nice, and thank you. That's it. I love this book, and I hope you all also like it once read it.
Thank you. Akanksha.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening to Honorable Principal Ma'am, our distinguished guest Mr. Ajay Jha, and others present. Today, I, Akansha, would like to represent an analysis of the book The Gift of Magi by O. Henry, revealing his flashes of brilliance in new and unexpected ways with this masterpiece. Talking about the author, William Sidney Potter, pseudonym O. Henry, is well known for his short stories representing wit, wordplay, warm characterization, and clever twist endings. That can be seen in the story The Gift of Magi, which is about a young married couple, James and Della Hiddleton, living in the modest apartment with some money troubles. The couple together only had two possessions which they considered as their treasure. First was Jim's family heirloom, a gold pocket watch, and second was Della's lustrous long hair falling almost to her knees. Further, when on one Christmas Jim and Bella ran out of money, they purchased the gifts through their selling of their treasures, which was sadly unhappy because both of them have to give their very precious things. The extraordinary thing that I noticed was that even though, like any other story, this also had protagonist and antagonist, but the difference was that antagonist here was poverty instead of a single person or any discrete group. For me, the author's purpose could be very well related with the real life. He probably wanted to tell that true love and care surpasses the materialistic things. O. Henry story. Like there are internal conflict where the person versus circumstances can be seen. There are couple struggle during poverty. There were external conflicts where they had their financial struggle. And the most critical one for me was person versus himself or herself. It was a kind of psychological conflict where they had to give up their possessions which they treated like their treasure. What I loved the most was despite of all these conflicts, they never surrendered their love for each other. In the conclusion, I felt that this could be very well related with the present situation of the society, where materialism trumps over true love more than the time in which the story is set. Now, I would really like to suggest to all of my friends and my family members to read this story because nowadays we cannot see true love a lot like we used to see in the past times. This story can give us a lesson also about a true love and care. Thank you.
Thank you, Akansha. Next, I would like to call Shaurya Raj.
Sorry, domestic intrusions. Please begin. Please begin.
Shaurya Raj, are you there?
Sure, yeah. Begin, child.
I think he is not there. Nina, the next thing, please.
Yes, ma'am.
We can't hear you, child.
Sir, actually, I think he is not there, present. So,
Okay. Shaurya, I thought I saw him leave. I guess. Maybe he's left.
okay, the next one. Please.
Okay.
Next one.
We'll move to C.
Yes, sir. Next, I would like to call Rashi Priya.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Honorable Judge, respected Principal, ma'am, my dear teachers, and all my classmates present over here. Today, I, Rakshit Priya from Class 10C, would like to give a short review about a book which is by Jonathan Swift, who was an Irish satirist author. So, basically, the story is about Lemuel Gulliver, who is Lemuel Gulliver, who is used as a protagonist in the story. And he is not only the main character but also used as a clever device by Swift. And Swift often uses Gulliver to criticize or to make moral judgments or while claiming that he writes without passion or prejudice. The story revolves around Gulliver, and in this story, basically, Gulliver um, in this story, actually, the experiences of different voyages of Gulliver is being mentioned. So Gulliver went through different voyages and he met different kinds of creatures and he also met magical creatures like fire nymphs who were. Sorry, sir.
No, please go ahead.
So
in his journey, yes, sir. So in journey, Gulliver actually met many different kinds of creatures. Like he met 6 inches tall creatures named as Lilliputians, and they symbolizes humankind's wildly excessive pride in its own existence. Then he met creatures who were 12 times of his size, who were named as Probdiganians, and they symbolizes the private, personal, and physical side of youth. Then he met Hyenas, who represented an ideal of rational exhaustion. So the main idea behind Gulliver's Travel is to persuade Britain to reform their own society and to show that no human is beyond corruption. So after several voyages, he comes back to his home, which is in England. And after that, he tries to get rid of all those unusual experiences, and then again he sets out for a new voyage. So his daring and bold nature of Gulliver really attracted me a lot, and the adventurous twists and turns which were being mentioned in this story, I really like those things. So at last, I would really like to suggest this book to those who like adventurous stories and who like lots of twists and turns in the stories. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Rashi Priya. Next, I would like to call Atul Raj to present his book review.
Good evening, Reverend Principal Ma'am, Honorable Judge, and my respected teachers. Today, I, Atul Raj, is going to present a thorough review of the book And Then There Were None, written by Agatha Christie. And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie was first published on 6th of November 1939. It is considered the author's masterpiece. When the book was first published in Britain, it was titled Ten Little Niggers, and when it was published in US the same year, its title was changed in And to There Were None. The main characters of the novel are Anthony James Marstall, Thomas Rogers, Ethel Rogers, General John Jordan MacArthur, Emily Caroline Brent, Edward George Armstrong, William Henry Bloor, Philip Lombard, Vera Clayton, and Mr. Justice Wargrave. The story is about 8 people who were invited to an island which was off the British coast. Together with the housekeeper and butler of the island, there were 10. In the room of each one, the copy of the poem Ten Little Indian was posted. Each of them start being murdered in the exact ways as the 10 little Indians died in the poem. The last one, Vera, also finds a noose in her bedroom and hangs herself. I got more curious and filled with excitement to see the end after reading this. In a surprise twist, it turned out that Mr. Justice faked his murder and was the killer. The central theme of the novel is murder or crime, which represent dark side of humanity and a feminist of subtext. The author had focused more on negative aspects that creates racial fear among people. In my opinion, focusing more on positivity would have done much better. I would like to conclude that people should read it and it is full of suspense and thrills and forces us to guess who is the real murderer. Thank you all.
Thank you, Atul. Next, I would like to call Isha Verma.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, honorable. Good evening, honorable principal ma'am, esteemed judges, and respected teachers. Today, I, Isha Verma of class 10C, is going to represent a thorough review and healthy criticism of the book The Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. I chose this book because Dickens' all books are at its peak with expectations of readers through his plot, twists and turns, and mysteries. While reading this book, I noticed two things. First, it has two endings. Second, it is the only novel except David Copperfield that is narrated in first person point of view. Aren't these the extraordinary things of the book? The theme of the book are first social class, that is how people being a middle class, is treated badly by Miss Havisham, a rich woman. Second, Pip's ambition. This story had been set up in Kent and London in England in 19th century. Charles Dickens' full name was Charles John Huffam Dickens. He was an English writer and social critic. The Great Expectation is one of his notable works. There are many characters in the story, but the main characters are Pip, the protagonist and narrator, Mr. Joe Gaggery, Pip's brother in law, Mrs. Joe Gaggery, Pip's sister, Miss Havisham, rich woman, Estella, an adopted child of Miss Havisham, and Abel Magwitch, the prisoner. Pip is an orphan who is raised by his sister and brother in law. He fell in love with a girl named Estella, an adopted child of Miss Havisham. She had adopted her to take revenge from men as her groom did not come on the wedding day. He wanted to become a gentleman. Abel Magwitch, whom Pip had helped once, sent Pip to London for achieving his ambitions. After 21 years, he returned back to his home. He expresses his feelings to Estella, but then she was marrying Drummond. After Drummond died, Pip and Estella were together forever. This story uses foreshadow. That is, the author, instead of focusing on Pip's expectation more, had focused on social class. I also think that author should tell us more about Pip's characters. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I would like to call Aryan Raj.
Good evening, esteemed judges and teachers. I am Aryan Raj of class 10C. I am here to review the book The Legend of Suhaildev by Amish Tripathi. The book gives us one more name of an unheard hero from an era that is obliterated from modern history. It makes us rethink about today's notion of class, caste, etc. Also, Amish re-established the genre of nationalistic historical fiction in Indian English writing. While the author moves along the anticipation of a big fight with the barbaric Turkic, it filled me with excitement. The story is unique in many ways. The story, combined with expressions used by today's generation and names and background of the historical battle, targets the modern audience at a right spot. Writing a historical fiction story would have been indeed difficult for him, as till now he has only written stories based on mythological fiction. Also, unlike his other books, this book isn't solely written by Amish, but is a collective effort of a team of writers. This story is based on Battle of Harich that was fought in 1034 Common Era between King Suhail Dev of Shavasti and the army of Ghaznavid Empire. The main characters of the story are Suhail Dev, King of Shavasti, Abdul, commander of Suhail Dev, and Salar Maksud, commander-in-chief of the Ghaznavid army. The story is set at a time when India was consistently attacked, looted, and plundered by the forces of Ghazni. The story starts with the destruction of Somnath temple. The destruction of the temple led the other patriots of the nation to avenge it. Suhail Dev of Shavasti started to wage guerrilla warfare against the forces of Ghazni. Meanwhile, I also got a surprise and a hint of the next book of Amish Tripathi when I get to know that Mehmed of Ghazni was assassinated by Rajendra Chola, the king of Chola Empire. Amish Tripathi has captivated today's reader by producing a fictional tale with contemporary background and amalgamating it with true historical events. I found this book interesting and went through it, and I liked the epic adventure of courage and heroism that recounts the story of a lion-hearted warrior and the magnificent Battle of Harich. Thank you.
Thank you, Aryan. Next would be Surojit Mukherjee.
Good evening, respected Principal Ma'am, Honorable Judge, and to all the teachers and classmates present. I am Surojit Mukherjee, and today I'm going to present a short review on the book The Story of My Life by Helen Keller. Helen begins her autobiography by pointing out the unreliability of memory and the difficulties of writing an autobiography. The book contains the sketches of the most interesting and important episodes of her childhood and youth. She gives a brief account of her family where we see that there is no financial issue. Born on 27th June 1880, Keller was leading an ordinary life, but in the second year of her life, she became ill due to a very severe disease called scarlet fever. When she did recover, she was both blind and deaf. After a few years, on the suggestion of Dr. Alexander Graham Bell, Anne Sullivan Massey was recruited as her personal teacher. The first alphabets which Anne drew on Helen's hand were of the word doll. At first, she couldn't connect, but gradually recognized it. One day, however, after she failed to differentiate between mug and the water which it contained, Anne took her to the garden, put her hand under running water, and spelled the word water on the other hand. She felt the cool and fresh sensation of water and realized that words she learned describe her surroundings. With this progression, she completed her education from Radcliffe College in Cambridge. The author also says that the worst thing than being blind is having sight but no vision. The fact that her illness provided her the motivation to write this autobiography inspired me to read this book. Helen Adams Keller was a great influence for the world and really a hero of the past. Thank you.
Thank you, 10B and C, for so many wonderful reviews. Now moving on to 10D, I would like to call Monushri.
Yes. Good evening, Honorable Judge, respected teachers, and all my friends. I, Monushri Pal, am here to talk on one of the most celebrated Victorian poet, Charles Dickens, and to review his book, Oliver Twist. So, talking of his early life, he was born to a beautiful couple in Portsmouth in present-day Britain on 2nd February 1812. Unfortunately, Dickens had not had the luck to afford formal education or to continue formal education for a long time because his father was thrown into a debtor's prison and they were not economically stable. Due to their instability, Dickens was unable to complete his education. And consequently, Dickens had to work as a child laborer in a glass manufacturing factory. So this child labor is not only prevalent in today's world, but it was from time, 200 years back, time immemorial. He drew ingenuity from the ongoing turmoil, from the ongoing vicinity. I want to give examples to make my point, such as if I talk of the Tale of Two Cities. In the Tale of Two Cities, this literary work, this great literary work, was written during the turmoil of the French Revolution, and we can easily connect with the elements. Now, since I have chosen the book Oliver Twist, therefore let us have a look at the background of the story. The mentioning of the background, it is very important for any author to first absorb what is going on in the surrounding area. And in this book, the Oliver Twist, the London underworld and poverty are the main target sites. Means the author has targeted poverty, mainly poverty and crimes, pickpocketing, thievery, murders, and all these. Now, I think that no other author, in my opinion, no other author can express these social evils so beautifully, actually not beautifully, so effectively in any of his works, his or her works. He has also expressed violence on women, domestic violence. So we can always connect his work with the present day situation. And it is very disheartening that these types of situations that had prevailed in those times, they are still in practice. And child labor in a pitiable way. He was treated very badly, and from Charles Dickens rose to be a great author. He thought that anyone can fall prey to crime due to poverty. Poverty was the main reason for a teenager, a minor kid, a minor girl, a woman to fall prey to crime. But this belief has been completely, totally reversed in this 21st century, with the dawn of the 21st century. Talking of the story, Fagin and Oliver are the protagonists. How are they the protagonists? Because in a joining bridge between poverty and crime, this is Oliver who is struck in poverty, and this is Fagin. And the author has very beautifully joined the bridge, very effectively joined the bridge. Here, Fagin is portrayed as the criminal. Fagin is portrayed as the criminal, whereas Oliver is depicted as vulnerable to crime. So it is such a pitiable, such a desperate situation that London was. London was in a total despair at that time. Now, if talking of inside of the story, it was a very pitiable condition actually. Oliver's mother had died at childbirth, and the boy was named Oliver Twist by Mr. Bumble, a parish official in England. And he spent a sad childhood. He actually spent, because no child can be happy on terms of forceful work, bonded labor, child labor. No child will be happy in this. So he spent a very sad childhood. Both Dickens also spent a sad childhood, and this Oliver Twist also. And at the age of 12, Oliver ran away to London, and he fell into the hands of Fagin. Now let us look at some conditions as to why Oliver was forced to run away from the parish. Now Mrs. Mann, who was in charge of the parish, she was a kind of modern kind of women. She received money for the care and protection of the children, and but look at the irony, she kept most of the money for herself, and the children were very, very poorly fed. So we can relate very easily this. This can be said corruption. This is straight away corruption. We can say that at that time also corruption was prevalent, and it has been very clearly portrayed. Oliver Twist was always hungry, miserable, and unhappy. He was thin and underfed. If I want to describe Oliver Twist in one word, I would just say him malnourished. He was malnourished. Now Oliver shifted to a new workhouse where the other children are a little older than his age. The food there tasted terrible, and though soup was served 3 times a day, it was plainly water. So there is no meaning. If there is no nutritional content in the food, what's your meaning of taking the food? You're taking plain water, having plain water.
I heard your review. You're performing really well. I would request you. It's been according to the time limit.
Okay, ma'am.
Go ahead with the review.
I was nearing the end actually. Now, though he has portrayed these social evils in a very good way, but I would like to say that morality and intuition have also made the point. Oliver Twist is a work of fiction, but nevertheless it connects us with the surroundings. But works like these have inspired the generation from time immemorial, and it's time I take a validation. Thank you, Oliver.
Thank you, Monushri. Now I would like to call Ayush Jha.
Yes, ma'am. One second.
Some noisy guests dropping in, young people.
Never mind, please go ahead. Evil is not something
Yes.
superhuman.
Is it Ayush?
Yes, sir.
Yes, please go ahead.
Evil is not something superhuman. It's something less than human. Good evening, respected principal ma'am and honorable judges. Today, I am here to talk about, I'm here to give a thorough review about the novel Sparkling Cyanide, written by Agatha Christie, renowned.
And today I would be reviewing the famous Gothic fiction by Emily Bronte, The Wuthering Heights. So this is the only novel which Emily wrote, and she usually writes poetry, and her poetry was published with other works by her sister. So uh, let's see what happens in this book. The plot actually takes place in Yorkshire during the time of 1801, and this actually happens. All the event happens in the two buildings, the Wuthering Heights and the Thrushcroft Garage. So I came across this novel by reading another this name of the novel in another novel's name. So and this book's name was mentioned in a lot of other places. So I thought I should read it, and after reading, I found it surprisingly different from other novels, because in what happens in other books that we see it through the story is narrated by the protagonist or the main characters, but in this novel it is told by a side character, Ellen Dean, who is an observer. She observed all the events and she was telling it to Mr. She told it to Mr. Lockwood, and he wrote it in his diary. So we are actually reading his diary entry. So this was a very different thing which I read, and in this book there are a lot of negative emotions, and it is a kind of dark side. The book is a dark thing, but regardless of it being a fiction, it clearly portrays the sad reality of the society, that how people are treated, the adopted are treated, and how children change when they are in the bad influence, and all the other bad things. So this was because of this, it was highly objected by the Victorian society when this novel was released. But then after some times, people became open-minded and they accepted this, and this became a very famous novel. So uh, in this novel, I had trouble understanding what Joseph was saying, because his accent was in Yorkshire. So it was kind of very different thing, and it was written on a different way. So it was difficult for me to understand, but still I did it. It was fun reading this because this novel was something new for me, and I would recommend this for people who like reading about ghosts and paranormal things, and those who want to try something new. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I would like to call Astha.
Yes, ma'am.
This is our
A very
final
good evening.
performance.
I don't have her name. Excuse me.
Yes, sir, I've sent you the final list for the
Five
15th.
children from each class.
Yeah, she is from 10D, sir. And
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't.
yeah,
Is she the last?
Yes, sir. She is the
Is
final
Astha the
participant.
last?
yes, sir.
Okay. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. A very good evening to Honorable Principal Ma'am, respected judge, teachers, and everyone present here. I am Astha Jyotirmay of class 10D, and today I am going to review the story The Last Leaf, which is written by O. Henry. O. Henry is one of the most famous American short story writer. Although his real name is William Sidney Potter, but he is well known by his pen name O. Henry or Oliver Henry. He was born on 11th September 1862 in North California in USA and died on 5th June in 1910 in New York City in US. He has nearly written 600 short stories about his life in America. His stories are famous for its surprise endings and his witty narration. He also wrote many poetry and non-fictions. His legacy includes O. Henry Award, which is awarded to outstanding short stories. Coming to the story, The Last Leaf was published on 1907 in his collection The Trimmed Lamp and Other Stories. This story was set in Greenwich Village in New York during pneumonia pandemic in 1900s. In the story, the author mainly focuses in informing the readers about the pneumonia pandemic that had occurred all over the world. Author also emphasizes other elements like selflessness, sacrifices, hope, and belief. Coming to the story, we saw that John C. had sadly fallen ill due to pneumonia and she had lost all her hopes for living uh, and also her expectations of life. And other side, Sue, who was her friend, she was doing all her best to save her life and she was uh, encouraging her so that she can live more. But John C had overcome a negative thought, that was that when all the leaves of ivy creeper that was outside her window would fall, she would also die, and this negative thought had become an obstacle between her recovery. But at last we saw that she survived and a hope rised in her. And this was due to Mr. Berman, who was neighbor of Sue and John C. He had sacrificed his own life for John C. He had drawn masterpiece on the ivy creeper as the last leaf, and so that John C. could have a hope for living and would understand that her will was more stronger than her mental stress or physical pain. And this success could not be forgotten, and this was really respectable. And reading this story, I found the importance of hope in our life. Also, that hope make us feel energetic, enthusiastic, and it is the beginning of change, which was lacking in case of John C. If she had a hope, then she could have recovered earlier only. And also we saw the meaning of true friendship in context with Sue. As a true friend, she always was present in need. She always helped John C. She encouraged her, what a true friend does, and also the sacrifice that Berman did. That a sacrifice of worth always paves way to the positivity. And I would like to conclude that this story was very beautifully written, and also other stories of O. Henry has also deep meanings, and one should really read these stories to gain more knowledge and more meaning. So this was for today. Thank you.
It was a knowledgeable talk show. We all got different insight about these books. Now I would request our honorable guest.
Ma'am, I am left.
Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Fine. Sir, Shaurya is in
10B.
10B, B section. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Today I am going to present a short book review on the wonderful and famous novel How I Taught My.
Shaurya, adjust your
Yes,
camera.
ma'am.
Come in light. Different angle.
Ma'am, now it is okay.
Yes, go ahead.
How I Taught My Grandmother to Read by Sudha Murthy. Sudha Murthy was born in 1950 in Chigaon, Karnataka. She did her MTech in Computer Science and is now the chairperson of the Infosys Foundation, a prolific writer in English and Kannada. She has written novels, technical books, travelogues, collections of short stories.
You are speaking really well. Keep your mic is really near your mouth.
Yes.
Little distance. Go ahead. Wonderful.
Her books have been translated into all the major Indian languages. Sudha Murthy was a recipient of the R.K. Narayan Award for Literature and the Padma Shri in 2006 and the Atimave Award from the Government of Karnataka for Excellence in Kannada Literature. So, in this story, Sudha Murthy recalls that how she taught her grandmother to read when she was of 12 and she lived in a village in Karnataka. Her grandmother loved the magazine Kashi Yatre very much, but unfortunately, she couldn't read or write, as she was an illiterate. So she would like Sudha to read out and explain for her. Whenever the magazine came, Sudha should read it out for her. Once Sudha went to a wedding for a couple of days. When she returned back, she saw her grandma crying. When she asked what's the matter, she told that when you went to wedding, there was no one who could read the magazine for me. From that day, she took a pledge, took the pledge to read and write, and from that time she set up the goal to read and write, and at the time of Saraswati Puja she received it. So the extraordinary things I noticed in the story is that the incident when Sudha Murthy went to wedding for a couple of days, as we all know, there was no person for her to read. She started crying, and the incident when she touched Sudha's feet as she taught her, and I would conclude my talk by saying that learning has no age group. Where there is a will, there is a way.
Thank you, Shaurya. It was a knowledgeable talk show. We all got to know different insight on these books. Now I would request our honorable excuse me, I'm fumbling, our honorable guest to say a few words.
Thank you, Neha ma'am. Am I coming through loud and clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Am I coming through loud and clear?
Yes, sir.
Audible? Okay. Well, I don't know about others, but I had a very memorable evening today. I grew in personality. I was blessed to be part of this wonderful, wonderful gathering of young citizens of tomorrow. And the kind of talent on display, I don't know how to describe it. It beggars description. You know, the word beggar used as a verb, it beggars description. So you can't put it in words. So it was just fab, fab, fab. I'll use your language. And I cannot the English department to I to commend them too much of bringing the key element, the reading habit, into the picture. You know, you can go through all the grammatical rules, you can have wonderful insight into grammar. At the end of the day, if you haven't read enough, right from your childhood, your language can never stand the test of time. You can never be a good speaker. You cannot be a good writer. You have to have that exposure to language. And it was abundantly clear that this is not a one-off occasion. that students are actually guided to read, 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 read. Shashi Tharoor was once asked by a student, Sir, can we have a word of the day from you? Because you are known for your exotic words. So what did he say? He said, I'll give you just one word, read. That was what he said to them, read. That is the word of the day. Reading is the key. And you've all proven that yes, you've been very good readers, observant readers, discerning readers. You've seen through the plots, you've seen through the language, and you have given it a complete look. So I cannot thank Gargi ma'am enough. She's been my colleague much before the time you people even took birth. So it was wonderful, wonderful. If I may offer a few points which I noticed. Children, you should be very thorough with your grammar. You should not make grammatical mistakes when you're making a speech or when you're taking part in a declamation. You should have that point absolutely clear, right? So I noticed a child saying comprises of, and that is not correct. It comprises three parts. And then I heard a child saying he or she was an illiterate. You can't be an illiterate, you can just be illiterate, right? And some pronunciation points were also there. There's no denying that unless you have good pronunciation, the standard neutral pronunciation, you really cannot make an impact on your audience. That is perhaps what makes Shashi Tharoor different, is that he speaks with a very neutral accent, one should say a little British accent, and that really hits the heart and the mind, apart from his amazing vocabulary, apart from the words that he uses. So pronunciation is one point you should be working on. And children, you are blessed with technology, something that we didn't have when we were your age. You have YouTube to guide you. You can go to dictionaries. And it's always good to check the pronunciation of words that you're going to be using in your speech, in your declamation, in your book review. I heard a child saying determined, and that is patently wrong. I heard a child saying creatures, that too will not do, because you create, but you have creatures. And then there was this one child, she or he, I can't recall, used the word consummate, right? And she didn't pronounce it quite properly. So you should make good use of available resources. You can go to YouTube, you can listen to the pronunciation multiple number of times and pick up the exact shade of how a word is to be pronounced. So good going, wonderful, memorable evening. I'll keep my speech short and sweet because speeches are always a little hard on the heart and mind. That's it. Thank you. And I would like to thank the principal of Surendra Singh letting me be here. And thank you, Neha. Get to know you. Young teacher. It's always good to have an English teacher on the younger side. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable review.
Anything else?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for your valuable review. And by giving us more knowledge, students would learn more and more from that. I would like to thank our principal, Mrs. Samita Sinha, and our guest, Mr. Ajay Jha, for taking out their valuable time for us for the students. They have taken pain to encourage the students and motivate them. Thank you for gracing the occasion.
Okay. So can I leave, ma'am?
On behalf of Surendranath Centenary School, it is always a privilege to hear you, and I always forward whatever you write in Ocean Manthan. I forward it to my children so that they should also learn. And really, we need your guidance. And please us, sir, and please bless
Okay.
with all your knowledge. And all the best for your
Thank
book.
you so much.
What
Thank
you
you
should
so much.
speak about, I wanted actually that you should speak about it 2-3 lines so that the youngsters they need to read it, your memoir. So please, if you can.
I hope you are sharing the audios of pronunciations that I post on the group.
Yes, sir, I do. I do.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Okay.
Thank you, sir.